So welcome to a special meeting of the Holyoke Board of Public Works. As the chair of the board, I'm recognizing that we have a quorum present, which includes Commissioner Joe Keatner and myself, Chairperson Mary Monahan. So tonight's agenda includes a public presentation of the report of the Waste Management Study Committee. That will be led by the consultant, Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. We will have opening remarks from Mayor Garcia. After the presentation by PVPC and the Department of Public Works, we'll be opening it for comments from city councilors and members of the study group. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Garcia.
Thank you, commissioners, and the members of the committee that are here this evening. You guys have no idea how excited I am to be at this point of this process. As folks know or recall, we put together a funding strategy with the greatest support through the council in wanting to engage this initiative to really evaluate our trash and recycling practices within the city, as well as understanding best practices and other initiatives that we could undergo in a very strategic, focused method to help improve the trash, the waste management within the city as a whole. And so here we have tonight, we're going to have a presentation here by the folks over from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. It's going to go over this report with members of this committee, and it's my hope that once we have finalized and complete this report, that we're able to work together with all stakeholders, the communities, our council, to work toward implementation of the report with the goal here to improve our trash and recycling methods in the city as a whole. So for the committee member, thank you so much for the time and effort you've put into this process. And I'm hoping that as we go forward, we receive this presentation, we continue to educate the public of the findings in this report, and that we continue to work together to implement it. With that said, I yield it back to you, Madam Chair.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. So next we'll have a presentation from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, Catherine Ratte and Eric Weiss, who were the project managers working with the study group, and that will be followed by a presentation from the Director of Public Works, Carl Rossi. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Eric at PVPC.
Good evening. Is my mic good?
Are you on?
It's on. So.
Yeah, just as somebody uses more than once, pull as close as you can, as comfortable.
Is that better?
There you go.
All right. I love hearing my own voice. Good evening. I am Eric Weiss. I am the Director of Economic and Municipal Collaboration for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. I'm going to just let Catherine introduce herself.
And I'm Catherine Ratte, the Director of the Land Use and Environment Department.
What that really means is we get to work with all the towns and cities in Hampshire and Hampden counties at different levels, in different ways, on different projects. It really just depends on what we're doing. In this particular case, there was a need expressed by the city to examine the solid waste situation between illegal dumping, littering, and the recycling, and how solid waste was disposed of. I was brought in because in my past, I have done a lot of work in the solid waste and recycling area. I was chair of the Springfield Materials Recycling Facility Board for 14 years. I worked in the hill towns on solid waste. I've worked with some of the cities on solid waste. So I was asked to step in and provide some support and guidance on this, as well as with the committee. I want to just say that that was one of the most fun committees I've ever served on. And I didn't serve on it officially, but we worked with. There was honesty. There was a lot of facts brought to the room. There was a lot of interesting discussions we had. I got different tours of different parts of the city. And the committee worked together. They really tried to work together to get things to happen, which I really appreciated. I also want to express the fact that I've gotten to know Carl a little bit over the last month or so. I appreciate him being here, and it's good to have somebody to work with in Holyoke. And we've bonded over the fact that my oldest son is living not far from his family in Jersey, so we get to converse over that as well. So with all that said, a Holyoke waste management study and report. These are the recommendations. The PowerPoint is a set of recommendations. Copies of the report were distributed. The PowerPoint is a summary of all that. We can certainly talk about all pieces of it as we go through. I'm going to try to get through our part of the presentation and then the DPW will do their part. And as I understand the format, you want us to get through everything, and then we'll do questions as we move.
At the conclusion, we'll allow
Right.
for comment and questions
Okay.
from the members, yes.
So it can't be an understatement that the city of Holyoke was deeply affected by COVID, and that one of the things that came out of the COVID experience was some of the ARPA monies and how they could be deployed by the city. Mayor Garcia said we should be looking at the solid waste, and that is exactly what happened. He put together the committee, he put together a study group, he hired the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and we began to look at different things that were going on in the city. I went for a walking tour of different areas with Stephen and Linda. I saw areas where there's plenty of litter. I saw areas where there's illegal dumping. We talked about the fact that the city's recycling program was kind of stuck in neutral, that it needed some help. We talked about the fact that the city has to really get its contracts in line so that it knows what it's doing with all these different pieces. So all of that was important, but the other part is that really the ultimate goal is to improve recycling in the city as well, to one, acknowledge that the city is a green city, and two, to make sure that the city is maximizing its potential in that area. Historically, the city, it was a dual stream recycling program. There were two different streams. We'll get into some of the details later. One of the challenges during the pandemic was the fact that sorting and inspection for sorting was just not done for all the obvious reasons, contamination, et cetera. Nobody wanted to touch and go near. So things kind of transitioned from dual stream to single stream. Whether it was by intent or by lack of manpower, it doesn't matter. That's basically what happened, and it became a de facto single stream. So you have a solid waste and recycling collection provided by the DPW that works with most households, not too many of the businesses, and it's citywide, and we have numbers for the amount of material that's been produced citywide. There's also been a chronic behavior issue of significant proportions in which there was litter, but not just some litter. There was considerable amounts of litter, and I'm preaching to the choir here. I know that. And that there was places where clearly there's some illegal dumping. People were either from inside or outside the city dumping stuff illegally for whatever reason. And this has been going on for a little while, and the city really, really obviously wants to change all that. There have been people who have been activists and calling for this. Linda was not shy about sharing pictures, many, many pictures, about the different places she's been in the city. I actually went on a walk with her and Stephen, and we looked at many places. So I know that has caused a considerable amount of frustration within city government, within the city. It's a sense of civic pride. It's a sense of belonging in Holyoke. And there's also a question of why. Why are people doing these? Why are people exhibiting these behaviors? And what can we do to change that? So the city is faced with two challenges. The first challenge was the significant amount of illegal dumping and litter, and the second was examining its recycling and solid waste disposal programs. Again, rehashing, the mayor put together the study group. We met a number of times over the last 6 months. We met both electronically and finally live, which was great. And we're going to show you some of the stuff that we've learned. But first, I want to just say, these are the people that were on the committee. Like I said, this was a great committee to work with. I really appreciated all the voices that were there. Nobody on that committee was shy about expressing their opinion, which I respect very much. And so I appreciate all the effort that was put in by citizens and volunteers on this. So the question then became what to do. And there was a number of different options as to what to do, but it really became clear that what the city needs to do is fill that recycling coordinator position. I know Carl's working hard on that, and I know that you've had a few candidates through, but it really... The real point here is you've got to centralize the message. It can't be one message from over here and another message from over there. It has to be one message for city residents. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we want you to do. Here's how you're going to do it. These are the proper procedures to use. And by doing that, not only are you giving everybody the same information, you're making it easier for people to repeat the behavior that they see their neighbors doing. If you're doing it right and your neighbor's doing it right, that's significant in terms of what people are seeing going on. So that would be the focus. We have already developed a specification the city could use if it wants to develop a campaign for public information. The city can choose whatever methods it wants to. Go ahead on that. And it'll be focused on the dual stream recycling, no illegal dumping, and no littering as a coordinated effort. This has to be a three-pronged effort that involves all pieces of it. It can't just be taking on one piece and hoping everything else works itself out. One potential choice in terms of cleaning things up and focusing on anti-litter and illegal dumping is to join the Keep America Beautiful, which in this case would be Massachusetts Beautiful. It's their portion of Keep America Beautiful that's in Massachusetts, and we've provided some information about that in the report. And they have campaigns that you can adopt and take part in, and it'll give you the right types of information that you need. The other one would be to potentially work with the Holyoke Chamber of Commerce to enhance the downtown business efforts. Similar to what's happened with the Springfield bid or any other bid, where they take responsibility for the area that they're in, and that helps with any number of items in terms of helping the city, helping the businesses. They want their area to be presentable so people will come to them. You want the area to be presentable so people will come to Holyoke. So that works out well for everybody. So shifting gears just slightly and understanding that the campaign is necessary and needs to take on a very broad scope. And from this point forward, there's going to be some decisions that have to be made about how to approach that. The other piece of this is the recycling collection piece, because it was a subject of great debate. Are we single stream? Are we dual stream? What does the bylaws and the regulations in the city say? What can we do? So there are, in fact, two types of recycling available. One is called single stream, and the other one's called dual stream. The challenge with single stream is it's messier. You don't get near the return on your recycling revenue that you get with the dual stream. You get penalized at the facility for bringing in dirty loads more easily. So it's a much more awkward option in terms of, from a cost point of view from the city. What dual stream does is it says to residents, there's one stream of bottles and cans, there's one stream of paper and cardboard. All you have to do is follow that. The city gets more revenue, the program works better, and I'll go into some of those details, but that works out better for everybody. And historically, Holyoke was a dual stream community. You guys had been doing things dual stream. It was only in the last few years there was some slippage between coordination, manpower, and the pandemic. So it says at the bottom of the slide, for the past 18 months, Holyoke had been a single stream community because of trucking and personnel issues. And then I put in very quickly, but no longer, because there's already been actions that have been taken to try to move this ahead. So how does the city go about doing this? Well, first of all, you focus on what people did historically, because many of them had the behavior already built in, so they know what you're asking for. And then you have to decide how you're going to focus your outreach efforts on bringing stuff to the Springfield Materials Recycling Facility. Let me digress for just a moment on that. That's a facility that's been in place since 1989. The state owns the site, and it is run by a private operator. In this particular case, it's Waste Management. They're a national leader in developing recycling facilities and recycling materials. If they're not number one, they're number two in collecting recyclables in the country. It's always a question of who's big. There's a couple big ones. They have a long history of being in Western Mass, both the facility and the operator. They know the communities. They were actually surprised when Holyoke pulled back from the dual stream facility and went to the single stream facility because they knew how costly it was going to be. They want Springfield to be part of the materials recycling facility group. There's a significant number of towns in Western Mass that are part of that. It's the largest regional recycling program in the country, meaning in terms of land area that it covers. Not in terms of tonnage, but in terms of the land area that covers, because there's some Berkshire towns, there's some Franklin County towns, there's some Hampshire County towns that all bring material there. So that's the first piece. The second piece is, how do they prefer you bring the material? They prefer it to be done with a split truck or two different trucks, where you collect the paper and cardboard and you collect the bottles and cans in separate streams. Fortunately, there were two new trucks, it's two, right? Two new trucks ordered by the previous DPW director. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, they're only being able to be delivered like now or last month. because of all the supply chain issues that you've heard about in terms of the way the world works right now. So those trucks have shown up just recently and are they ready, willing, and able to be used? Okay. When we last talked, they were close. They had to do a couple more things. So the city now has split trucks, so it can go around and collect recyclables in a dual stream fashion. That's wonderful. You have 2 new trucks, so you don't have to worry about things breaking down or anything else like that. You can then say, okay, what we want to do, and Carl and I were at the Springfield MRF together the other day with the operators. We walked the whole facility. He got a chance to see everything that was there. The main goal here is to get the residents to focus on this dual stream process, this dual stream concept. Reach out and we're going to try to help you get materials that you can give out, et cetera, to residents, because you're not the only one. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. This has all been done in other towns around here and in other places, which is why I put this there. This is not from our region, but it's the right idea that there are many, many dual stream recycling facilities or dual stream MRFs out there. And if you just look, a picture's worth 1,000 words here. That is what you're supposed to put in the dual stream setup. Paper and cardboard on one side, bottles and cans on the other. It's really not that complex, but it is really necessary that those 2 streams be kept separate, because when you deliver the stuff to the MRF, they don't want to see a lot of paper and cardboard in your bottles and cans, and they don't want to see a lot of bottles and cans in your paper and cardboard. It's really that simple. So information like this can be custom tailored through the DEP. You can get handouts and posters and information from the DEP, somewhat through some of those grants we talked about, which I'll get to in a second, that will then allow you to train residents and get the materials up to the quality you want. Because what Carl doesn't want and what the city doesn't want is for the trucks to start showing up at the MRF like tomorrow, which is not going to happen, but at some point soon, where they get penalized or they get, say, this load gets rejected, and what do you got to do? You want to get there, dump your load, and move on. You want them to say, good load, clean, move on, no problem. That's what you really want. So for those that don't understand how a split truck works, you can see that it's split. It's also split in a way that it's like 60-40. One side is slightly larger. One's for paper and cardboard because you got to condense the volumes down. One's for bottles and cans, which doesn't compress as much. What would happen at the MRF itself is the truck actually swings through the facility twice. First, it does all the paper. Then it comes back and it does all the bottles and cans. And they get weights from each time they go around the loop to get the total weight of the material and then the total weight of each stream, so they know when it comes time to start paying for revenues how much tonnage you've actually delivered, because their revenue stream is based on the tonnage you deliver. And then there's an equation that they have that works it all out with the revenue that they earn that comes back to you as a city eventually. Right now they're paying about $35 a ton, for dual stream, but right now you would be paying over $75 a ton for single stream. So that gives you your cost differential. There have been many times in the history of the MRF where there's been positive revenues, and the belief and the feeling is as the economy continues to normalize, I know it's been a slow, long process, that so will the recycling economy. There have been a lot of ups and downs. It can't be underestimated, anybody who's read anything about recycling markets, that China is a big influencer in the recycling markets. There's also now a really big focus on developing national recycling capacities so we're not dependent on world markets, so we can use that material either within New England or within the United States. It's still years to come, but the idea is there that we've got to get back to what we did that way and not just depend on world markets to solve all our problems. Because we learned a valuable lesson. I mean, everybody in this room knows, everybody learned a valuable lesson in terms of supply chains on things you can and can't do. And this is one that, it's jobs, it's the environment. You and I talked about this. It's jobs in the city potentially, it's jobs in the region, it's a way to keep the region cleaner, it's a way to support recycling. It's a win-win-win all the way around. So, as the city returns to dual stream recycling over the next month or two and begins to use these recycling trucks, as you said, then you're going to see the costs for managing the recycling to go down, because you had a contract in place in which you were paying top dollar, and not in a good way, maximum dollars, to get the recycling out of the city. A little bit of background on the MRF and the MRF contract. The MRF has a contract that is negotiated by the DEP on behalf of the communities that use the MRF. So Holyoke does not need to get into the whole contract negotiation. The city's allowed to use the contract as is, because it's been put out there by the state, so it's kind of like buying off state contract. So all of those things are set up. The contract that you've recently signed back onto, because I know it just happened the other day, is good. It's in place until June 30th, 2024. During my tenure on the MRF Advisory Board, I helped negotiate 2 different contracts. They just did another contract and they'll do another one. So it will happen that there'll be a negotiation through a group that's actually called the MRF Advisory Board that advises the MRF and DEP on how to run the MRF. And Holyoke will be included in those discussions through that advisory board. So in terms of procurement, it's set up for you already. You don't have to reprocure or redesign a contract to do any of that. At this point, I also threw in, and if anybody on the city council wants to get to the Springfield MRF and take a look around, oh, I'm going to keep doing that. They'll welcome you. Just make sure you call ahead. Have Carl call ahead, or if you want to reach me, that's fine. Because they don't want you to just show up. They'd rather know that you're scheduled for a visit and those kinds of things. So I did there's a little bit of numbers here just to show you, but the bottom line here is that what you're really trying to do is get your recycling costs as low as you can possibly get them. As the markets improve, maybe you'll get to positive revenue, or at least zero. Zero would be perfectly fine at this point. And you want to make sure that you're not violating any of the rules as you bring your materials to the MRF and as they get dumped at the MRF. So there's a whole set of recommendations within this report. It goes back and forth through a number of different areas. This list is a summary of all those are. And they're meant to be very much in terms of prioritized, in terms of how this list looks. Rejoin the Springfield Materials Recycling Facility, the MRF. That has been done. The contract is in place. It was signed off on by the mayor and by the DPW, and I strongly support that decision. I think that was a great thing to do. Affirm that Holyoke is a dual-stream city. I know there's certain processes. I know it's been a subject of debate. I assume it's already been dealt with in terms of and how the ordinances that the city has in place and everything else. And that means that you don't have to pass a new ordinance. The ordinances are in place for dual streams, so there's no step that needs to be taken there. The next step is completely up to the city on how it wants to do it, to launch a comprehensive public and information education campaign. You've emphasized to me and to Catherine and to the committee that you really want that to fall under the responsibility of the recycling coordinator, and I completely understand that. You want it to be their program, they're working with it, they understand it, they're helping present it to the city, and that's a great direction to go in. We're trying to work on identifying different funding sources and grant programs the city can use to help support its recycling programs and containers. There's information in the report, which I'll work with Carl on, of different groups that they can talk to. One is DEP, and the other one is the Recycling Collective. Yes, and they would help. They'll provide stuff, and it's just one of those things I got to show you how to contact, because I got another email from them saying, "Hey, what's up with Holyoke?" And I said, "Oh, I got to wait for them to, we got to get through that stuff." There has been some talk of some form of a pay-as-you-throw system. That's something that the city has to kick around to see how it wants to go. Whether it's the first bin, it stays that, and it's you pay after the first bin. Whether it's per bag. I live in a town that's done per bag. It's a way to generate revenue in a program, and it's a way to increase recycling, but it's also a subject of great debate, and every town takes it on differently, and I'm not pretending to prescribe anything to Holyoke. You guys got to have your debate to figure out how to move that idea forward, or not. The next recommendation is the joining of Keeping Massachusetts Beautiful. There's opportunity there. There are people who are already trained who can provide you and your recycling coordinator with a great deal of background information and publications and all those types of things. It would be to the city's benefit. It's the city's decision, however it wants to handle that. It's not up to me or whatever the PVPC to decide. There is the piece of beautification and anti-littering throughout the city, and then you also have a transformist development, a TDI district in town, that it could be really encouraged there to set a model, to set an example for the city. That was one that we thought with the TDI fellows that are available, they can be somebody who's available to help the city through that process, and it's part of the effort to improve that location, that area within the city. An area which came up a number of times is that there's a limit to how far the recycling program can reach. Right now it does up to, is it 2-family or 3-family homes? I forget, but it's four. Okay, I hit the midpoint there. And that over that, it's done through the private haulers, and there was, let's see, was Michael Moriarty was the one advocating for going further and going bigger on that. And that's a step-by-step process, because each and every one of the landlords manages their site, manages their materials, and it's something that the city would have to take on or decide you're going to do up to a certain number, from 4 to whatever that magic number is, whatever works for the city. Some cities do it, it works, but you've got to have both the enforcement and the encouragement there. It's both that has to be there. But as Linda has pointed out many times, if you live in certain parts of the city where it's all apartment complexes, you don't have access to recycling, or access to very limited recycling, whereas the households in the city that have access to the city program have full access to recycling. So there is a discrepancy there. And then the other part was, how can you once this is established and up and running and things are going well, there are many other areas that the city could look into to expand its recycling program. Through the schools, there could be expansions, building on what the schools already have in place. There's always composting, and there's some discussion about your sewage treatment facility and composting, and can there be some cooperative or collaborative arrangement done there over the next, when you move on that? That's certainly possible. There are cities that have done that. There's plenty of possibility there. There is a big move on the part of the state for textile recycling. It's as simple as setting up Salvation Army type bins or whatever. They take care of everything. If you've ever been to one of the places that they go, they sort the clothing. The stuff that's junk gets turned into rags, gets sent to the rag people. It's it's a nice operation the way it works. There's been a big push on mattress recycling, which has caused both problems and solutions all at the same time. So there's plenty of opportunity for the city to take this on. What I am really encouraged by is that Holyoke is embracing the idea of recycling and getting the city clean and green, much the same way that the city is green when it comes to water power, solar power, and a green city that way. This is another complement or another piece of being a green city. And the reason that this graphic is up there is the idea is simple, and we all know it. Instead of taking, making, and throwing out, create that loop, close the loop. Maybe it's in Holyoke that loop can be closed. I know Mike's an advocate of that. Maybe it's another city in the region that can support that, or another place in the region. The idea here is we want to make sure we keep that loop as closed as possible to support both the recycling programs and the economy and the environment all at the same time. So we enjoyed, I can say that, we enjoyed working with the city on this project. It was a different kind of project. You had good participation from your citizenry in terms of the people on the committee. Our contact information is in the report. If anybody wants to ask me more questions, that's fine when we get all done. But I do want to say that Catherine and I really were very pleased with how focused the groups were and how I've had numerous conversations with Mary on the phone. I hope it's speed dial and we're getting along and all those good things. But I learned a lot about the city, and I learned a lot about what the city wants. And to watch the city go through the process of hiring somebody like Carl to bring somebody in was a real change in sort of the direction, because once you're in place, we could start talking about actions that could be taken. So I think this is a real opportunity for the city. And we're going to continue to work with the city. We've discussed how we can set that up. And like I said, I think it's a real opportunity for the city to move in a really good direction to help clean the city up and get recycling back to where it should be. So I think from here, Carl's going to talk, and I'm going to be his guide through the slides about what the DPW is planning on doing, and then and then you're going to move to questions, right?
Correct.
Did I leave anything out? Awesome, good. All right. Why did we stop screen sharing? All right, where's your tech? Why did we stop screen sharing? That doesn't make any sense.
So,
Let me see if I can bring it back.
Okay. Give us a few moments here, and we're getting the screen back.
Hope so,
Looks good.
so far. You were cruising. See, you
You did a great job. The next slide should be,
I know,
okay?
but it's not here.
Okay, so what we can
Sorry,
do,
and I'll go look for you.
I can see that our DPW director, Carl Rossi, came prepared as DPW directors do. So he actually has a hard copy of the slides in front of him. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Rossi, and he'll continue with what DPW is
And
doing.
I'm going to keep looking for your
Okay,
slides.
thank you.
Thank you, Eric. It was a pleasure working with Eric and Mary and, the mayor and the rest of the committee. That was my first taste of it in, January 5th, before I even started. Just seeing what you guys are doing and, promoting dual stream. I think it's very important because it's a cost savings to the municipality, and hopefully, like Eric said, it'll be bring in some revenue, and that's more, that's the important thing, is always try to look for efficiencies. And Holyoke was doing that, as Eric mentioned in his report, that this was something that, because of COVID, because of manpower, we started picking up as single stream. So we're trying to get back to it. But the first thing we're doing as our next steps is focusing on refuse, because we have money in ARPA, I think $525,000 in ARPA funds to work on this. But the first thing we're doing is procurement and distribution of trash totes through state contract. So today I spoke with Cascade Carts, who are on the state contract, and they have an 8-week lead time that they will assemble the carts and deliver it to the residents with any outreach material attached to the cart and as a door hanger. And it's, like I said, will be funded through ARPA. We're looking for a summer commencement, but also depending on, like I said, the lead time. So if I could get this started for the carts distributed probably in August, it'll be fantastic. Now, we also will strive to ensure all outreach materials are also in Spanish, so you'll have the dual languages on all of it and through any materials that we send to the residents. We're going to identify and deploy citizen advocates to help us getting the message out to the residents, similar to what the committee has done as far as this report. Now, dual stream recycling, that's our next step. After getting those garbage totes out, we have to identify the funding source for new recycling totes, either through grants or capital projects. There'll be a public outreach of dual stream recycling through the MRF, and also we joined the MRF recently, about the past month. Now, our outreach will be through social media, either the DPW Facebook page, city website, robocalls, emails, texts, and mailings. And part of the mailings we were thinking about is going, since everybody has a gas and electric account, we'll go through the Holyoke Gas and Electric and see if we could do a mailings through them. The most important thing is the hiring of a refuse and recycling coordinator. Currently interviewing candidates for the refuse and recycling coordinator position. We have a second interview with a candidate this Thursday. Hopefully we'll get him on board in the next couple of weeks. So the refuse and recycling coordinator will be responsible for coordinating the public outreach recommendations through the report, through the schools, which is also important because it seems like the kids in the schools will bring that message home to the parents, because they'll point out to the dad, you didn't put that bottle separate, you didn't separate that bottle, and they're like that. I know my kids were like that when we were doing recycling. So we'll develop sustainable public education and outreach program through the recycling coordinator, secure grants and other funding sources, and he will be responsible of applying enforcement for all this. So that's our next steps as far as DPW goes. And I'll
Okay, and in order to keep this conversation moving along, the Board of Public Works, looking through the ordinance and found in section 74.36 the creation of a recycling advisory committee. So we are, as a board, recommending that this board come into existence. And it's a board that is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council, has about 9 people, I think it says. So their purpose would be to provide advice, assistance, and recommendations to the Board of Public Works about the recycling program. So this would include, which I think would probably help advance our program even further, members of the private real estate industry, which I think is apartment management, someone from Holyoke Housing Authority, someone from the business community, and one member from nonprofit institutions. So hopefully the board recommends the creation of this advisory committee.
I really like the piece of duct tape in this picture.
Okay, so that concludes the formal presentation of what the study group recommended through the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and where the Board of Public Works and the DPW is in implementing many of those recommendations, and a plan to move forward to make sure we keep going forward. What Joe said, this final report is a continuance of a conversation, not the end of something. So it's a great start to keep Holyoke green, as well as save money and potentially generate revenues. So with that, I'll open the floor. Those present here and those online, you can raise your hand. Those online who are city councilors and members of the study group have access to commenting on tonight's meeting. I see no hands raised, so I'll start in the room. I'm going to go to Councilor Bartley first.
I'll be in first. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the PVPC. Thank you to the mayor for taking the lead on this. I've said it 100,000 times. Litter belittles us all. And that is something I've taken to heart. When I walk my little guy every morning, we pick up trash, we pick up recycling. You cannot believe the amount of debris by the number of slobs that walk around the city or drive around and throw stuff out the car window. Or it just blows everywhere. But as I noted when I walked into tonight, Madam Chair, and I know the wind blows in Holyoke, I get it, but it blows in 350 other towns and cities. When you walk into this beautiful building and you see that ring lined with trash, that's not the first time I've seen it. I probably walked in here 500 times. So I'm going to tell you it's lined with trash right now. Whose fault is that? Nobody in the room. But all of us collectively. Litter belittles us all. So if we see it in the City Hall building, our most pristine, beautiful building in the city, it's going to be everywhere else, and we need to set the tone. So with that being said, I will say through the chair to the mayor, you're doing a great job. If you want to file an order through my name relative to the commission that the commissioner pointed out, please do so. Maybe not tomorrow night as a late file, I can't stand them, but maybe for the next meeting, the second meeting in April. I have an allergy to late file orders if we can avoid them. You file it through my name, then we'll send it right to Pete's committee, and we'll set up. We'll start taking interviews, and we'll figure out who can serve, and we'll do that immediately. If that doesn't work for you, then any other way that we can be helpful, we will be helpful on the city council to the extent that we can. Relative to some of the background on here, pointing fingers doesn't help, but I can assure you, Eric, that the communication of dual to single stream was never made. It just happened. And it didn't happen by osmosis. It happened because it was coordinated by a party or parties in the DPW and possibly in this building. Now, we're not going to name names, but most of us know how that happened. So it's very aggravating to know that it did happen. But what is in place is a city ordinance that says dual stream. Can't get around that. Except they did get around it. And it happened. Not great, but we deal with it. But to hear that and the vote for the trucks had to come through this body, and we approved it. And I don't remember what was it, 260,000, Mary? Per truck? Do you remember the?
Oh, that was before my time.
Yeah. It was a lot, and it's bonded, and we did it. And because that's how serious we take it. And I think to a person in this room, I think we take trash and recycling very seriously. Relative to the bins that Mr. Rossi and Ms. Monahan pointed out at a finance meeting a few weeks back or a month back, that's great news, reiterated tonight, $525,000 through the mayor. Again, to the city knows, the mayor makes a call on the ARPA funds. So thank you, Mayor, for making the call on the ARPA funds. There's a lot of us that have the totes for recycling, Mr. Rossi. I, for one, I have 3 of them, and they're filled up just about every single 2-week period. So with either plastics, I've always had, and I've always separated. I've never had one single stream. I've always separated. Most of my neighbors separate as well. But as has been pointed out that night, I think by Mary on finance, and I know Councilor Vacan has been very adamant about this, that the bins, you might as well throw the cycling on the ground because it just blows everywhere. So we've got to prioritize getting the totes. Mayor Murphy, I know he used ARPA funds to procure 100 of them, so hopefully we'll have some ARPA funds left over to procure some more than necessary totes for the recycling. Percentages, and here are some interesting numbers. It's tough to compare Holyoke to everybody else, Eric.
Yeah.
But what can be done is to compare Holyoke to gateway cities. And I guess I'd be very interested to see where Holyoke stacks up relative to gateway cities in terms of recycling percentages. It's not quite apples to apples when we're comparing Holyoke to Beverly, Mass, Dover, Mass. Okay, and Carl, those are big money towns in Massachusetts. You never heard of them, but most of us here did. So those are money towns, and they do what they want when they want because they have the money and the resources. I like all the other ideas. I'm excited, very excited to get forward with this. And like I said, the summary was great. It was all on point. I'm sorry I'm speaking 100 miles an hour, but I do have to run. But thank you to the Board of Commissioners for your help. Mr. Rossi, good luck with your work. Eric, Catherine, thank you very much for your work. And of course, Mayor, keep up the good work, okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Linda Pratt, who's a member of the Waste Management Study Committee.
Yes, thank you. And I have a couple questions for Carl. Welcome to Holyoke. We're very glad you're here. The postcards that people have received in the past that outline their trash week, the green and the blue, have you seen those?
No, I haven't.
Well, apparently they were done this year, but they weren't mailed out. And I imagine it's because of budget issues. But people have wondered where those postcards are. And that also always specified that we were a dual stream city. So it talks about what you can put in paper, what you can put in your other container for your glass and your plastic.
These were postcards that were sent to the residents?
They were postcards that were sent to residents, yes. Everybody got one. So it would be...
Excuse me, it shows also probably the schedule on it?
Yes, it shows the schedule. So, yeah, I don't know. I just wondered when you said you were going to go through HG&E for mailing, if there was thought about getting those postcards out. And I believe there was even a Spanish version done. So,
okay.
My next question is hours at the dump. Are you looking at increasing those hours? I mean, I don't have recycling where I live, so I take my recyclables down to the DPW. But a lot of people aren't able to do that due to the hours that you're open.
I have to take a look at it.
Okay.
To see if we could extend the hours, but obviously with manpower right now,
right.
we can't do it.
I know I think that's something the public has been really anxious to see happen as you go forward.
I think what's happened in previous administrations that they've cut down the hours, and now I think it's only like open 2 days a week or something.
2 days a week till like 7:30 to 2:30 with
yes,
when
we're open, so I know that's something that one of the services that the the city was giving out to the residents, which was a great service. But like I said, previous administrations have cut that.
Right.
So now we're trying to see what we can do. And
Okay.
with
I just
lack of
wanted to make you aware that that is something that people are really asking for. The other one is kind of a pet peeve of mine. I live in Ward 1, is street sweeping. So I know there's been talk about trying to do street sweeping on a more regular basis, not just once a year. Some of our streets really need it desperately, and they need it frequently.
Okay.
So I think that will be part of the whole
Sure,
outreach
that's what I'm saying.
campaign. But
So the thing is, we don't do the street sweeping.
I know, but your department's in charge of Veolia,
Yes.
who does street sweeping.
Which we'll talk to them regarding
Right.
that upcoming.
Okay, so those are my comments, and thank you.
Any other comments from, okay, so member of the study group, Mike Sullivan?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to point out to the public is this report and the recommendations. A lot of work has gone into this, and clearly to me, implementation of these recommendations is a great stepping stone towards attracting new businesses, new opportunities based on recycling, based with manufacturers, throughout the country, and bringing a global spotlight to what we're capable of, and utilizing this as a stepping stone to part of the portfolio of our already green footprint that we have with hydropower and future development in the city. So this is a great stepping stone, and I'm excited to see how it helps transform the city over the next several years.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and that is an excellent point, and was brought up as part of the study group's discussion. Any other questions and/or comments from members present in the room? Mayor Garcia?
Thank you so much. I think what I reviewed here and what I'm hearing from the presentation and what we're hoping to do as we go forward is really it's a cultural shift, start to change the culture of how we treat our waste here in the city of Holyoke. And it sounds like to me that what we need to work toward is zero waste. Any opportunity we can to have folks in households to recycle more alleviates the need to throw away regular trash, then I guess produces a better cost savings for the city and so forth. And so from what I heard and what we're planning, getting the toters, they're going to be household city-issued trash receptacles. And the expectation with the enforcer being the recycling coordinator would be that households it'd be enforced that households have their trash in these receptacles. And if it's not in the receptacles, it won't be picked up. There's a million from the time I've been here, listening to all the public concerns, really trying to understand where all this trash is coming from being blown around in our downtown. It's a combination of factors. And by maximizing on how we take care of this, the trash, because folks, they put trash bags on the curbside, critters get into them, folks get into them, wind blows, trash starts blowing around. The small recycle bins too, which I guess is going to be our phase 2. Not the small recycle bins, but larger recycling toters, so that folks are buying more things on Amazon, which means more cardboard boxes. Making sure that these items are in these toters. Anything that's not in these toters will not be picked up, which will require folks to pay more attention on how they get rid of their trash. I heard mentioned briefly, and I understand, it's going to be a community discussion, because I'm sure it's going to be debatable, was the pay-as-you-throw system. And I think that's a huge, huge opportunity for the city to better manage our trash and recycling issues. And when we say pay as you throw, and I know we've talked about it in the committee before, anything that doesn't fit in those toters, if you want to get rid of your trash, some sort of system where folks would have to pay, whether if it's by bag or whatever the case, so that we can make sure that the trash gets picked up. I think, again, another system being proposed there, we can continue to talk about it, that's going to help shift the culture and attitude of the public of how we get rid of our trash. We have we're sticking with dual stream to all the points that Councilor Bartley mentioned. It's in the ordinance. We should be in that practice. We're back in that practice, not only because it's the local law, but also from what was presented is the best option when taking care of our trash. So we'll continue that. Between the recycling coordinator and then having the campaign also is going to be a huge factor into all of this as we try to roll out some sort of communication campaign to the public on what our municipal expectations are when people are getting rid of their trash. That's a big piece of this, and something that's already in the works that it looks like we're working on. So some of these recommendations are already boiling up and we're working on. What was the other? Give me one sec. There are some other things that I know it's going to be a little bit more challenging, but we need to be very mindful of and work with our private business owners that have the units that are more than 4 units, so that we encourage recycling on that front. I'm sure there's going to be more discussions on how we try to figure that out. As far as what Linda had mentioned, regular street sweeping, absolutely. I've learned internally many reasons why it doesn't happen regularly, and those are just things that we need to work on, as well as expanding the hours down at the DPW. Again, there's more internal complexity that limits our ability to do it, but those are just things that we have to set the tone on and work on ourselves. A lot of what's being recommended here, what I see is a shift in the culture and how we think, how the public thinks about getting rid of their trash. I'm all for this. We'll continue to chip away at how we implement it. To Mike Sullivan's point on my right here, this can't be another document that we just put on the shelf and allow it to collect dust. Implementation is a big part of our next steps. Some of it is already in the works. A lot of it I'm going to require more support. I think the pay-as-you-throw system, I think that merits more discussion into understanding what that means, and the public understands what that means, because I really do think that direction is going to completely shift and even transform what we see happening in our downtown when it comes to trash and recycling. But again, great job. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone's time and effort on this. The job does not stop here. Obviously, there's so much more to do, and I'm very much looking forward to see how we can continue to work together to get this done, because this, I got to tell you, it's a big issue we have right now in our city. I get the calls. I see it every day. We clean up High Street, and no less than 30 minutes later, it's like we didn't do anything. And I think a lot of that has to do with multiple factors that I do believe the recommendations here will de-escalate these issues from continuing to happen in our downtown and around the city, of course.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Linda?
I just wanted to add one more thing. Part of this report does talk about looking at waste management in the schools, including recycling and possibly composting. And I learned today that McMahon Elementary will be starting a composting program. So I think that's great for people in the city to know, and maybe we can use what will be happening at McMahon as a model for how other schools might want to start composting.
Super. Thank you. Any more comments or questions? And study member Carl Eager.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'm an optimist, and I'd like to leave with a degree of optimism. And while I was sitting listening to the mayor just recently speaking, I was moved to remember way, way back when I was on the federal level, we had to come up with a formula because there was not enough regulation. It happened to be the nursing home industry at the time. I'm going back now to the 60s, okay. We come up with a formula that was called the 70-20-10. Had to do with humanity. 70% of humanity knows right from wrong. They don't even need a benchmark. They do right. 20%, by just natural human failing, need a guidepost. They need a rule and regulation. They're always that, am I doing right? Am I okay? 10%, no matter what efforts we make, they will spend more time, effort, and energy to be circumventing a system or a process. To wit, for 10%, 90% of us have to be overregulated to a degree. I'd like to twist, though, the term of the 90% on the regulation, and that is, there is our responsibility to meet the human dynamic where, to the extent that we can have the correct trash containers for people that need to dispose of something, if it's into the house resident area and we can do the recycling, we make sure we have the appropriate bins to do that. I'm an optimist. 90% of us, we're going to do it. But if we can meet the 10% by having those appropriate ownership factors, I think we're going to be able to instill that to them. Just thought I'd share that.
Well, thank you. That was very good. And to build off of what you just said, I think this is perfect timing in the city right now. We have a relatively new mayor, recognized an issue, put together a group that represented the community, hired Pioneer Valley Planning Commission that brought to the table their expertise. We have a new, actually the city's first director of public works. And we actually have a brand new commission. The Board of Public Works, the longest someone's been on this board has been 1 year. So it's a whole new culture change when it comes to public works and in particular waste management. So a new recycling coordinator will be hired shortly. New attitudes, and to go back to what Carl Eager said, as the chair of the board, I'm very optimistic that these things will continue to move forward. Again, this is a continuation of a conversation. This report is not the end of that conversation. So with that being said, is there any more comments from the folks here? There's no one with their hands up. Fellow commissioner? No? Director? Anyone from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission? Okay, before I close this meeting, though, I do want to say we are a dual stream recycling city. So if you, by chance, went back to mixing everything, please stop now. I know DPW staff have been out there monitoring what they're seeing, and there are a lot of residents that are still applying a single stream approach. Please stop doing that, because once we go back to the dual stream and the percentages are up, and as a city, 100% doing that, we will begin to save money, if not realize revenue from that product. So with no other business, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.